Today marks the second day of a four-day pause in fighting between both sides in the Gaza Strip. The first day on Friday saw the release of 24 hostages held by Hamas for 48 days, and they included 13 Israelis, 10 Thais, and 1 Filipino national. We have details in this report.
Palestinians in the war-stricken Gaza Strip are experiencing a second day of relative calm, absent of Israeli attacks as a temporary pause in fighting holds. After almost 50 days of constant Israeli bombardment that has killed nearly 15,000 Palestinians in the enclave, a four-day truce came into effect from early Friday and appeared to be proceeding unhindered today, Saturday. But the United Nations said on Friday that the 24 hours prior to the pause witnessed an intensification of Israeli strikes from air, land and sea throughout Gaza. Palestinians released from Israeli prisons were met with celebrations on Friday evening as they returned to their hometowns and villages in Jerusalem and the West Bank. Israeli health officials say there wasn't a dry eye in the room during hostage family reunions. Doctors also said on Saturday the 13 Israeli hostages released early on Friday are in good, stable condition after their release. In the meantime, Israel says it is examining a list of 13 further hostages who are due to be released by Hamas later today. In exchange, a number of Palestinian prisoners are also due to be freed. Lorries carrying humanitarian aid are already lined up to head into Gaza through the Rafah crossing for a second day. Despite the temporary truce, conditions in the territory remain dire. Food, fuel, water, and medical supplies are desperately needed. Almost 208 lorries reached Gaza on Friday, the biggest convoy since Hamas attacks on Israel on the 7th of October and Israel's retaliatory offensive. An estimated 20 Thai nationals are still being held by Hamas as hostages in Gaza, the Thailand Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement on Saturday. It added that of the 10 hostages released on Friday, 4 had not been previously confirmed as missing by Israeli authorities. The ministry said families of the released hostages have been notified and Thai embassy officials are in the process of making necessary arrangements for their travel back to Thailand. It also thanked the governments of Qatar, Israel, Egypt, Iran, Malaysia, and the International Committee of the Red Cross, expressing its deepest appreciation to all of the parties. The temporary truce has allowed the 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza, where no place has proven safe in the past 7 weeks, to experience their first night of sleep without the fear of being killed in an Israeli air raid. The Israeli military, on the other hand, is also warning that the implementation of the hostage release agreement will be complicated and nothing is over until it is over.
And for more on this development, I have joining me Global Affairs Analyst Jide Ojo, who joins me now to discuss the release of hostages in the four-day pause in fighting. Good to see you again.
My pleasure. Happy weekend.
Yes. So let's begin with what goes through your mind when you see images online of IDF soldiers invading houses, in an attempt to violate human rights in the course of its operations.
Well, what goes through my mind is it's not even about IDF or Hamas. It's about the threat to world peace. I once recently wrote in my column in the Punch about whether there will ever be world peace. Because as we focus on Hamas versus Israeli war, there is still Ukrainian versus Russia, there is still Sudanese war on this continent. Congo has been at war for over 5 decades. So where do we go from here? And of course, issues around land is very testy and very, very tension-soaked, which is at the center of the Hamas-Israeli war about who controls the land. The Palestinian claiming that Israeli occupied their land, that they want them to vacate. The Israeli saying, no, this is our land as well. And I'm happy about what Joe Biden said yesterday about the two-state solution, which has been on the table, but which has never been consummated. I think it's high time we just see to the end, because it bleeds my heart to see death, to see abduction of babies. I mean, among those who were released yesterday were 2-year-old baby. There is another American who was just 4-year-old as at yesterday, who has not been released yet. Then we have 85-year-old woman, 75-year-old, people in their 50s, in their 40s. But they all shared one thing in common, which is humanity. We have a shared humanity. And the United Nations have been talking of silencing the gun. African Union has been talking of silencing the gun. When will the gun be silenced? Because whether it's Israeli or the Hamas or the Palestinian, they are all human beings. And vicariously, we are all suffering. Because even the rest of the world is affected by what is going on there. You could see that even Ukraine is not receiving prime attention in the global media space anymore. After more than 1 year of dominating the media space, nobody is even talking of Sudanese war, where hundreds of thousands have died for the past months that this war has been on without let or hindrance. So
Or,
my own concern, my own
yes.
worry as a pacifist is, when shall we see the end to conflict and war?
Mr. Joe, I'm also going to take you up on Joe Biden's statement yesterday, where he spoke about the war. But there is another side to the war that I believe is less spoken about, which is upholding the rights of persons with disabilities in this war. We know that Israel signed the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, but it seems like evacuation orders have not been upholding this.
Unit. Like I said earlier on, both Hamas and Israel have violated human rights. And in fact, I'm happy, or should I say that I'm not happy, but you could see that South Africa has even petitioned the International Criminal Court against Israel over its human rights violation. Because whether we like it or not, the death of 1,200 Israeli on October 7th precipitated this whole thing. And in war, human rights flew through the window. In war, you cannot really talk about human rights. In this war, apart from the rights of persons with disabilities that have been infringed upon, we have also have the rights of the sick persons. Hospitals have been bombarded in air raid. Hundreds have died in hospital raids. And you will think that hospitals, religious centers are not part of where war should take place. But in this 50 days old war, we've seen hospitals being bombarded. We've seen even religious centers being bombarded. We've seen persons with disabilities, their rights being violated. Of course, even the rights of children. Israel is also signatory to the Global Convention on the Rights of Children. UNICEF has been trying to see to that, to the enforcement of that. So it's not just the persons with disability that I'm concerned with. I'm also concerned with the rights of women, the rights of persons with disabilities, and the rights of children, because all of them have been victims of this war. I just spoke about the release of a 2-year-old yesterday. Imagine somebody who is just a baby, who is still in a formative stage, not knowing what is going on around him or her, and being abducted for about 50 days. Or look at the rights of old people. 85-year-old. And of course, one cannot afford to glamorize any of the aggressors.
All right, Mr. Ojo, we're going to talk about the rights of these persons later, but just because of our time, let's talk about, in the long run, we know that a military response cannot on its own bring security. What do you think should have been the response of the Israeli government to the threat posed by Hamas?
I read a number of positions. The Americans and the Israelis are saying that Palestinians have spawned the two-state solution that was being brokered by the U.S. government over the decades, while others are saying no. The Israelis are the one that has been standing in the way of a two-state solution. But whether we like it or not, just like you rightly pointed out, a two-state solution will still have to be, agreed upon and enforced. Neither the Israelis will allow themselves to go into extinction as a result of what has happened way back in 1948 or thereabout, and the Holocaust that they have suffered in Germany and other places in Europe. They have come back to Israeli to share that land with Palestine. And the Palestinians to also have a right to exist. Both Israeli and Palestinians have right to exist. And for these reasons, I think their leaders on both sides needs to agree to a two-state solution, the demarcation of boundaries where international community will broker peace and said, this is where the land of Palestine starts and ends. West Bank, Gaza, and this other, Jerusalem and all of that. And this is where the Israelis are supposed to hold sway. Once that is agreed upon and enforced, I believe there will be lasting solution. But for both sides to be digging deep and say it has to be their way or no way, that will continue to bring about this. Remember, the Hamas struck on the occasion of 58th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War of 1967.
All right, Mr. Ojo, we still have a lot more to discuss on the war. I'm going to take you up on that later, but because of our time, well, I've been speaking with Jide Ojo, who is a global affairs analyst. Thank you for your time.
It's my pleasure. Do have a great weekend.